My guest today is Graham Allison. Graham Allison was the founding dean of the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, and I'm going to talk to him about the global balance of power by asking him what he thinks the future of Thucydides might look like in a post-COVID world.
God knows. No one knows. There are huge uncertainties. But if I start with the bottom line, I believe the future of the balance of power will look more like the past of the balance of power than something fundamentally different. First, one of the fashionable new claims is that coronavirus has upended international relations as we've known it. I call it the new end of history thesis. I think that is wrong, okay, and mistaken, that the realities of international politics for the last few thousand years will look a lot more like what Thucydides wrote about than like something transformed. There's another claim being made now that this is going to be the epiphany in which leaders appreciate that all 7.7 billion of us share a small planet and share interests, and therefore we're going to bury petty nationalism, which has been the story of the past, to embrace a new globalism. My proposition is don't count on it. If I go specifically to the most important bilateral relationship in the world, the rivalry between the US and China, I believe it will be even more so, not less so, after coronavirus. And we can see this actually in what's happened so far. So basically, this is, I think, made more vivid the reality of an underlying fundamental structural Thucydidean rivalry in which a rapidly rising China is seriously threatening to displace the U.S. from positions the U.S. has become accustomed to at the top of every pecking order as the leader, for an American century.
You use the word rivalry for US-China relations. There are those who think that rivalry has moved into conflict. Do you agree?
I say, read Thucydides, and then reread Thucydides. He's got almost all the answers. Brilliant book. And in a rivalry in which a rising power really is threatening to displace a ruling power, you have a clash of identities. So unless and until China quits aspiring to realize China's dream, which is for China to be all that can be, China will be encroaching on positions and prerogatives that Americans have been accustomed to. And unless and until Americans decide who cares about being number one, the U.S. will regard that as a threat to who we are. In that rivalry, every dimension of the relationship, from who gets a vaccine first, to who's responsible for coronavirus, to who's providing assistance to whom and who's taking, every dimension of the relationship is infected. The question is only whether the two states, each of whom knows war would be catastrophic for it, and therefore don't want a war, nonetheless find themselves so badly misunderstanding each other and so exaggerated in their misperceptions of each other that some third party's action that has nothing to do with nothing drags the two of them into a war. So what about Taiwan? That could be the Sarajevo of 2020 or 2021.
Are there other Sarajevos lurking around?
Absolutely. I think another very dangerous one is North Korea. If North Korea goes back to testing ICBMs, and God only knows what Kim Jong-un will decide to do next week or next month, and Trump attacks North Korea's launch pads, and we did have a second Korean War. We remember what happened in the first Korean War. We could have a war between the U.S. and China there, just in a local setting. So unfortunately, we live in a very dangerous world, as you understand extremely well.
If the leaders in China and those in the US were to take your advice and learn from Thucydides, what is the most important lesson you would want them to learn?
I think they're going to have to learn to live together, because the alternative is to die together. And that's not a very good option. So how to learn to live with somebody who's my fierce rival? Well, actually, both we and they face challenges and threats like coronavirus, which neither of us can defeat acting alone. So we have to learn to cooperate. So can we both cooperate and compete simultaneously? The term that I like is actually a term from Chinese history, back from the Sung Dynasty, a rivalry partnership.